My name is Tim Sink. I'm president of the Greater Concord Chamber of Commerce. And it's my pleasure to just recognize our sponsor, Lincoln Financial Group. Lincoln has supported this event for several years. They are a tremendous community supporter, not just for the Chamber, but for organizations throughout the region and the state, and we really appreciate their generous support. So please join me in thanking Lincoln Financial Group. We have a terrific board at the Chamber of Commerce. As usual, my boss, Phil Hastings, the chairman of the board, is here with us today, and about half our board is in this room today. So could I just ask Chamber board members to stand up and be recognized, please? Please do. Oh, terrific group. Also wanted to recognize Commissioner George Kapatis is with us today, and as a segue, and there he is in the back, George, thank you, Commissioner. And I want to use that as a segue to mention our next luncheon forum. It is Lunch with the Commissioners. We have 7 key state commissioners that are committed to come and speak briefly on March the 8th. They're going to talk about their top priority for a few minutes, and then we will also have some Q&A. If you would like details on who those commissioners are, there are invitations at the registration table. You can grab one on the way out. We'd love to see you there. Want to mention that the Concord Young Professional Network, which is an affiliate of the Chamber, will be meeting on February 28th at the Draft Restaurant in Concord. It's a program called Budget on Tap, and it is done in conjunction with the Concord Coalition. This will guide attendees through a budget exercise, and it's geared to expand their awareness of choices that policymakers have to make. It is open to all folks, so whether or not you consider yourself a young professional, you are welcome to attend that event, and it should be really cool. Just give the Chamber a call and we'll make sure you have a name badge, and we're expecting you. And that's being sponsored by the Draft and by Maggiato, Bellabrow, Feeney and Frost Law Firm. Our next business after hours is March 13th at 5:30 at the Capitol Center for the Arts, and that is co-hosted by Lake Sunapee Bank, so we'd love to see you there. And last thing I want to bring to your attention, our annual business showcase. It's a trade show that we do right here at the Grapponi Conference Center. About 100 exhibitors, maxes out, about 500 attendees. It's a great business-to-business show. We've got a few booths left, but that's going to sell out. That is on March 19th right here, 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. We'd love to see you there. So at this point, I would like to invite James Christie from Lincoln Financial Group. He is Vice President of Competitive Market Solutions for Lincoln Financial, and he will introduce the Governor.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, everyone. I'm excited for the opportunity to be here and introduce the Governor. So, Governor Chris Sununu is New Hampshire's 82nd Governor and is serving his first term as the state's Chief Executive. He's currently the youngest Governor in the country. During his first year in office, Governor Sununu took pride in delivering a balanced state budget without new taxes or fees and establishing full-day kindergarten. Governor Sununu also doubled funds to fight the opioid crisis, made investments in clean water projects, expanded educational opportunities for students, and signed business tax cuts into law. Governor Sununu received the 2017 New Futures President's Award for championing policies that improve the health and wellness of Granite Staters. Before being elected governor in 2016, Chris Sununu served 3 terms on the New Hampshire Executive Council, representing 32 cities and towns in Rockingham and Hillsborough counties. Governor Sununu is a businessman who in 2010 led a group of investors in the buyout of Waterville Valley Resort, where he worked as Chief Executive Officer and was in charge of the expansion of the ski resort in cooperation with the United States Forest Service. The Governor grew up in Salem, New Hampshire, graduated from MIT with a BS in Civil and Environmental Engineering, and worked for 10 years cleaning up hazardous waste sites. Governor Sununu lives in Newfields with his wife Valerie and their 3 children. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Governor Chris Sununu.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Full house. And it's all for the great chicken. It was good, actually. Someone commented, they said, "Oh, I see you're actually eating." And I said, "Yeah, I'm trying." I saw myself at the State of the State, and I said, "Oh, I got to lose some weight." So on my diet, I try to eat when I can eat, and I'm trying to be good. I eat my protein and my vegetables, just to let my wife, in case my wife is watching, so she knows. The cake looks delicious. Look, I thought what I'd do is kind of give a little bit of a brief reversion of the state of the state. A lot of the things that we've done. At the end of the day, there's no denying 2017 was a hugely successful year for the state. It really was. And it'll be in some ways tough to match that with 2018, but I'm a big believer that what you do yesterday really sets those stepping stones, if you will, the foundation, the launching pad for where you go tomorrow. So the first thing, I mean, just not to recap every piece of legislation that we went over, but some of the key ones. The first one is obviously the budget, right? The budget is always that big thing that really sets the tone for your principles, your philosophies, what the priorities are going to be. And what we really tried to do was throw politics aside, which is not easy, right? Especially in this day and age, especially in 2017. I mean, I could write a book just about being governor, you know, now, and what's going on and how to manage those dynamics. It's tough, it really is. And especially when you have to get reelected every 2 years. Everyone keeps reminding me of that. We're going to be fine. I'm going to get reelected in 2018. I know you're all Concord. I think Concord was vastly in my corner last time. Right? I don't remember. But so asking, basically leading a little bit with a philosophy with the legislature that, look, throw the politics aside. Don't worry about the politics. The campaign, we'll get to the campaign in 2018, but through 2017 is how are we going to get better outcomes? The four walls of the State House do not have the answers. We do not. And again, another message I'm constantly reiterating to the legislature. We don't have the answers. So I'm forcing everyone to go out, talk to the constituents, talk to the services, talk to the nonprofits, talk to the individuals. You want to know what you need in the opioid crisis, right? Don't just go talk to advocates. Go talk to the moms and the dads that have lost kids, right? Go talk to the parents and the families that have been torn apart by it. Go talk to the folks that are actually in the recovery centers or running the recovery centers. That's the only way we're going to really know what policies to really implement. And it sounds cliche. I have a couple cliches I use, I've come to realize, but it really is true. First, kids first. It's all about the kids. Right? I don't do this for my own well-being. I do this because I have a 5-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 13-year-old, because I had a business, because I want to make sure New Hampshire is really a place not just 2 and 4 years from now, but 10 and 20 years from now, that my kids want to live and work and raise a family. Right? That's what it's all about. That's what a lot of us do. Right? It's really all about that next generation. And again, put people above politics. Mel Thompson, I think, is the one that really coined that phrase, but it's so true. And when you spend time on the individual, right? Homelessness crisis, go to a shelter. Talk to those that are there. How did they get there? What is happening? How are they getting their services? What's the bureaucracy that's getting in their way? By hearing those stories, that's when you take those stories and say, okay, well, here's the policies that we have to change, and you let those individuals essentially create the new policy, which drives better outcomes. And it's part of the engineer in me. It really is, I guess. It's all about re-engineering a better solution and a better system. And there's no time to rebuild your system than when things are good. If you just kind of kick the can down the road, things are good, we're doing fine, no big deal, don't need to rock the boat. We've had a lot of that recently. When you do that, you get to a crisis point, and then you're trying to drastically re-engineer the system. But then you're only doing it based on the crisis, right? We want stability. We want long-term success. We want long-term growth. And we're seeing the signs of it. We had the fastest growing economy in 2017 in the Northeast. The fastest growing population. For the first time, our population growth exceeded Massachusetts in about a decade. That was over a decade. That was the first time that happened. Right? We're driving millennials into the state, which we have to start doing because we have an aging population. We know that. That's not a bad thing necessarily. That's why we have one of the most talented workforces in the country. Right? One of the highest paid. We have the highest median income in the country of any state. The lowest poverty rates. These are wonderful metrics of our success, but we cannot rest on them. So by doing that, you create a balanced budget. We're able to cut taxes. And by the way, the business profits taxes are coming in way above last year, even though we cut taxes yet again. And we're going to keep cutting taxes. That's good management. But then also taking what you have and refocusing it on priorities, priorities, priorities. You can talk about the opioid crisis. You can talk about our issue at DCYF, Division of Children, Youth, and Families. Abused kids, really, is really what we're talking about. Homelessness, mental health. I talk about it all the time as the unspoken crisis in this state. It really is. we were able to put real money and resources behind this stuff, and we didn't just say, well, we'll put some money at mental health and we'll let the bureaucrats figure out how to spend it. Again, we went back and I brought the best and the brightest in. Republicans, Democrats, folks that were literally homeless, right, whose families had recently become homeless. Whatever, how did they get there? What's going on in their lives? And we were able to create programs and really get to the bottom of it. We had a backlog, and we still have a backlog in our emergency rooms, for example, for mental health. People are essentially being warehoused. Go to Concord Hospital, right? Essentially being warehoused in an emergency room. That's not right, right? Now, is the answer we need more beds at New Hampshire Hospital so they can get better mental health treatment? Well, that would be the easy answer, but what we realized is that's only part of the solution. We have 70 people, it took some digging, but we finally realized we have 70 people at New Hampshire Hospital today that are ready to be discharged. We have no transitional housing. They have no place to go. Okay, well, we got to look at the back end too, right? So the reason I'm getting into the details here is because you have to get into the details. You really do. And so that's one of the philosophies and the mentalities we're really trying to push with folks. I don't ask people to agree with everything I say. And every bill I've signed and put into law, I don't necessarily agree with every part of that bill, right? You have to find agreement where you can to move the ball forward. And I think for too long we let the polarization of a party or polarization of a philosophy prevent us from going forward. Well, I don't agree with, the 10 out of 10 things in that bill, so I can't do it. We're not going to do it. Right? I suppose there are times when the issues are severe enough where that could happen. But for the most part, you've got to find that agreement. You've got to find compromise. Doesn't mean you compromise your principles. Doesn't mean you compromise not being for myself as a Republican, and I don't ask the Democrats to not be Democrats. That's fine. Well, it's their problem. They have to deal with it. It's not my problem, but they'll come to eventually. But you do kind of force the issue and say, where can we find agreement? This is bigger than ourselves. It's about those individuals. So again, education. I go back to the kids. Education is a big deal with me. Early childhood education, early childhood prevention services in homes, right? You want to really help with the undiagnosed adolescent mental health issues, and there is so much of it in this state. We have very few programs that really help adolescents and teenagers deal with their mental health issues. We see the horrible repercussions of that when we don't address it. You got to get into the homes early, create prevention programs, help the families, help the parents or the parent, know what tools and resources are available to them. Help keep that unit together. Because again, when the students and the kids have that support at home, it translates, right? When we had extra money in our budget, we could have created bigger programs and keep spending in bigger government. That's easy. We traditionally do that. But when you have extra money in your budget, that's one-time savings. So you manage really well, you exceed your expectations, you're not necessarily going to have those savings the next time around, so you have to use that on capital investment, and we did. Everyone used to tell me, well, remember, it's state government, you can't get too tied up in the cities and towns, you really can't affect their property tax issue. You bet we can. We sent $30 million back for roads and bridges, right? For real infrastructure that offset your property tax dollars that otherwise would have had to been used for those projects. I was in Claremont maybe about a month ago, and no, it was late in the fall, probably in November, and they said, Governor, you see that? And I said, yeah, they're working on the road. They said, that's yours. I said, what do you mean? They said, well, we had 0 infrastructure projects in our town budget because we had no money, but thank God for that grant, we actually got at least 1 project done. It doesn't mean everything turns over overnight, but that's, again, the mentality. When we maxed out the rainy day fund at $100 million, and this was last year. This wasn't even response to the tragedy we saw this year. We were way ahead of the game. I said, for every dollar we get over $100 million in the rainy day fund, we're going to invest it in safe schools. And we did really well. We had about $20 million left over. And at the end of the day, we literally just passed another set of contracts yesterday. About 300 schools are now going to get straight grants for projects that they otherwise couldn't do on their own, or they couldn't get the tax base locally to do. I had a woman and again, I don't want to take all the credit for this, but Chuck Morse and I can share the credit a little bit. But I had a woman come up in Laconia. She gave me a big hug, and I was a little startled. I think my security was a little startled too. But it was with a smile, and she said, I want to thank you. She said, I'm a Democrat, and I didn't vote for you. And I said, you're forgiven. But she said, I was fighting for 10 years to get a better entryways into our schools because it wasn't worth it. It wasn't working. And you just gave this Laconia $330,000, and we're now rebuilding our entire security system on our schools, finally. Well, that's great. 300 schools across the state are getting similar types of grants. Surveillance systems, emergency plans, training, whatever it might be. So that again, what happened in Florida, could that happen here? It could. There's no law you could ever pass or set of laws to ever truly prevent that 100%. So we better be prepared, because it could happen. So again, it's working with kids, making sure there's services for the students, investing in the schools, investing in plans, investing in our preparedness, so that if a crisis were like that were to happen here, we're ready and we know how to deal with it. And we've made those investments early on, and we can keep making those investments down the road. You know, we obviously last year, one of the big things I put, and people said, "Oh, you're nuts, Governor. No Democrat has ever even proposed funding full-day kindergarten. Never mind a Republican actually getting it done." We got it done. We got it done, and I put everything I had behind it, not for politics. There's obviously nothing political about it, because people couldn't figure out the politics of it. I said, it's just the right thing to do. Should your zip code limit the opportunity that your kids have? Because one kid lives in this town and one kid lives in that town, they can go to full-day kindergarten and that kid can't? No. No. The government is not here to guarantee much. I say that all the time, but it's so true. The government is here to guarantee much, but opportunity. Equal opportunity for everyone. And that's what, and then what you do with that opportunity in your business, as an individual, in your family, that's up to you, right? But we need to make sure we're opening those doors. People ask why I'm so passionate about the ESAs, the education savings accounts. That's something that we're really spearheading now. Education savings accounts would only help probably a fraction of a percent of the kids in this state. But the ones it would help, it'll create opportunities and open doors that have never been available to them. So I got a letter, I talked about this on NHPR, I was on with Laura Conoy this morning. I got a letter from the town of Salem, and they said, Governor, if you institute these ESAs, it could cost us $40,000, right? They have a budget of $66 million, and they're worried about $40,000, but would it help those 10 or 20 kids with a pathway that was never open to them? Because look, public schools are great. First governor in 25 years to come up through public schools. Foundation, one of the highest ranked in the country. They are phenomenal for 99% of the kids. There's a percent or so out there. It's just not the right fit. And the families, again, this was all, ESAs all stemmed from the families lining up. Mostly inner city families, frankly, mostly poorer families that didn't have opportunity, that were stuck going to some very tough schools. And I was at the schools and I was with the families, and they said, look, we don't have the opportunity that other communities have. We don't have the opportunity, frankly, that the rich kids have. That's how it was put to me. I don't like putting it that way, but that's how it was put to me. And I said, opportunity. How do we equalize that opportunity, especially for lower income families? And so ESAs are the way to do it. Will it cost towns a little money? A little. A very, very little bit, right? But again, it's about the individual opportunity. The trick of government is this. How do you get the big $12 billion budget government to have a system that focuses on individuals? That's what we're trying to bring in this kind of new mentality. Regulatory reform, right? The regulatory mess that was part of New Hampshire was one of the reasons I ran for governor. I was running my own business. It was crazy. And we were doing things very well. I'm a former environmental engineer. I take the responsibility of the environment very seriously. But boy, we were getting bashed on by DES and Department of Labor and all these departments for nothing, right? And I thought, boy, if we're a really good steward and we're getting beat up on like this, and it's costing us tens of thousands of dollars in lawyers just to get through a process that we shouldn't be in the first place, what about those that don't have the resources? What about those small businesses that can't afford it? So we're going through, and we have a bill right now, a kind of a three-phased approach. First phase, let me back up. First phase was last year. We took 1,600 rules and regulations, threw them away. We absolutely just threw them right off the books with an executive order. Phase 2 is going on right now. The most comprehensive regulatory reform bill the state has ever seen. It streamlines permitting. It streamlines licensure. It allows better reciprocity for professionals in other states to come in without having to wait 6 months to get licensed to practice whatever they're practicing, because pretty much every profession in the state is licensed. That's a problem in itself. And phase 3 next year will be going after streamlining a better business model for the state. How does the state interact with businesses, put out contracts, things like that, right? So we're in phase 2, and it's going to be phenomenal. I mean, it's going to save every builder, developer, and business in this state literally tens of thousands of dollars. Not because we're just about handing money back or streamlining a process, but just because it's the right thing to do, right? It's always good when government is simply out of your way. right? Government needs to be there with good regulatory structure, of course. It needs to be fair. But when you create so much malaise in the bureaucracy, that's where you lose that equal opportunity. There are certain businesses that are being unduly burdened that they can't handle, whereas other businesses maybe can. That's not fair. It's all about fairness. It's the live free or die thing. You probably heard me say it before. More than 4 words on a license plate. It's truly how we have to remind ourselves how we have to live and how we're different. The last thing, and obviously I can go on all day. I tend to ramble. But, you know, I talk about being different. It is such a powerful and important thing in being different. Doesn't mean everything we do, we are going to do is right. So one thing we try to be different in saying we're going to be a government that says, you know what, if we do try 5 things and only 3 or 4 of them work, it's okay to say that 1 or 2 things, those didn't work, right? Let's pull back. It's okay to admit that it didn't work right. We do that in our private business. We do it in our family. I admit to my wife all the time how wrong I am on many, many things. But that's okay as long as you have a system that is flexible and can meet the demands of the change. When you have such a rigid system that, well, you realize something's wrong, but what's the point of even recognizing it because you can't get out of the path that you're on, that's not flexible. That's not working, right? That's working against yourself. The final way we really need to be different, and why I think we got so much done in New Hampshire in 2017, is we simply did not let the dysfunction of Washington, D.C. drag us down. It is dragging people down all across this country. People are angry. They're shouting on social media. They don't even remember what they're angry about sometimes. They really don't. It's so polarizing. We're not doing that here. That's how we're different. We set that tone, if you will, with the legislature. The fact that I have Senator Woodburn and Representative Shurtleff, the minority leadership, in my office, sitting on the couch saying, okay, what's happening? What's going on? What do we agree on? What can we get done? Doesn't mean we agree on everything, but at least they know where we're coming from. I know where they're coming from. That's how you find agreement. That's how you get things done. So by having a very different mindset here in terms of our approach, not just, again, just Congress, I don't know what they're doing down there. I love the tax bill. If you don't love the tax bill, you're missing the boat, because holy smokes, Cisco just reinvested $67 billion back into the U.S. because of that tax bill in Washington, Trump's tax plan. Apple, $300 billion from overseas that is now going to be invested right here. We have 2 major companies, I can't say exactly who, that are looking at investment in their infrastructure in excess of $100 million simply because they can repatriate that money right back here to New Hampshire. They're going to invest in the infrastructure, they're going to grow the economy, they're going to invest in employees. It's working. It's working. It's the only real successful thing that's come out of Washington. They should have dealt with healthcare reform. It was, again, so polarized. Right? There were no real ideas coming from the other side. Republicans have to take their lumps too. They didn't get it done either. Right? None of them did. You know, people say, oh, Governor, you know, I can't believe you spend so much time with Donald Trump in the White House. You bet I do. That's the job, right? Somebody has to do it, right? The White House has a lot of influence on what happens with a lot of things. You've got to be there establishing relationships. Do I agree with everything the White House says? No, of course not. Do I agree with the approach? Do I agree with the tweets and all that? No, of course not. But I'm going to advocate. My job is to be the best darn advocate the state has ever seen in terms of promoting business, the workforce, and getting what we need out of Washington, D.C. And not a lot's coming there right now, but we're getting a little bit. The bill that addressed $6 billion in additional opioid funding, that's phenomenal. That is great. And we fought hard to make sure that they're going to change the formula so we get a little more piece of the pie, because we deserve it, and they're going to get that done. So you got to be an advocate constantly out there. But you do it with, it sounds silly, but it's so true. If you're in business, you get it. You got to do it with a smile. Right? You got to do it. Yeah, well, I don't agree with you there, but I'm going to keep working with you. You know, you got to stay positive. You got to be optimistic and hopeful. If you're in the business of being a leader, an elected official, you're not optimistic, hopeful, and talking the positive. Doesn't mean you ignore the negative, but you got to be promoting. You got to give everyone else hope. That's part of the role of leadership in your businesses. How far would you think your business would get if the CEO was moping around, complaining all day long? I know that happens because I used to do it myself as a CEO, but I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But you know what I'm saying, right? You got to set a tone. And we've set a tone here. And again, we have the fastest growing economy in New England. That is not an accident. That's because we're completely resetting the tone of how we do things here. And the successes are just starting to come in. And we're laying a foundation really for the long term. We got to keep it up. We can't rest on laurels. We can't rest on really, really good approval numbers. Just saying. You really can't. Approval numbers today mean nothing come the election of November. We know that. So you can't rest on that stuff. But you got to stay hopeful, and you got to keep talking the positive. And if you can't get certain things done, that's okay. That's okay. But you keep going after it. You don't let it drag you down. And look, I'm in a business, you can get very jaded very easily in the business that I'm in right now. You got to have a really, really thick skin. But we are a state of community. We are a state that believes that coming to the chamber lunches matters because you build relationships. And you build relationships in your towns, and you know your selectmen, and you control the bulk of your tax base because you're at that local level. We participate in town meetings. That is what makes New Hampshire so different. And that's the power of this state. And what is that all about? Personal relationships. We believe in that. When you build those personal relationships, it's hard to get bogged down in that negative polarization of Washington. Don't let the dysfunction of Washington define who we are as Granite Staters. We're better than that. We are a hell of a lot better than that, frankly. We've got to remind ourselves. Okay, I get on my roll. I get excited. I do get excited. I love the job. In case you can't tell, I love it. You got to have passion for it. I love it so much I'm going to be doing the, if you didn't hear, the 2018 Sleep Out. Out in downtown Manchester on March 23rd, and I'm looking at George Kapatis back there because he's going to be joining me. Look, things are flying high, but when you're talking about the opioid crisis or homelessness, abused kids, one is too many. One is too many. So we're trying to bring some awareness. At any given time in our state right now, about 300 kids are on the streets, right? That's a problem. So we want to raise a little awareness. Borja, a friend of mine, does this great program where he basically asks a lot of people just to sleep out all night in the park in Manchester. And he got about 80 people to do it last year. Right? I'm trying to really amp that up because it's about awareness. It's about people remembering, just because I'm over in Newfields or we're over in Portsmouth or we're here in Concord, whatever it might be, there's people across the state that are having some tough times. And let's be part of that solution. So I put the challenge out. I'm forcing, I don't legally think I can force them, but I'm going to look at them really, really hard until they agree to come. And we're all going to go do the sleep out and maybe bring their leadership teams and be part of that. Right? Sleep out on some cardboard in the parks of Manchester on March 23rd and let the state know that it's something that we think is important to highlight. It's an issue that we think that we can make a difference on. And there's a lot of issues out there, of course. This is just one of them. So you can sign up online if you want to join us. It's going to be quite a crowd. It's going to be, and it'll be, I don't want to say it'll be fun. It will be pretty fun because it's always fun when you get together with a bunch of people and you know you're making a difference and you know you're having real activism, if you will. Like you're not just screaming to the shelves and not just hitting the tweeting and social and Facebooking, face tweeting, whatever they call it now, snapgramming, I don't know. You know, when you're actually out there and you're doing something, you're talking to people. That's where you can really make a difference. I just think that's where New Hampshire sets itself apart. Look, a lot of other things we did in 2017, going to build on that for 2018, but I want to give time for questions. If people have questions, I'm happy to take a question on anything and everything. Or I just go away quietly and I'll watch you all eat chocolate cake while I remember how much I love vegetables. Yeah. Well, that is clearly the hot topic. Couple things. What we saw in Florida, there's not a piece of legislation that'll get rid of that, unfortunately. If there were, we'd pass it, right? So you have to look at all the spokes of the wheel, and some of the things we've talked about. Undiagnosed mental illness in schools. Making sure there's peer support and good support services for those kids, so we're working with those kids before they hit a crisis point of hopelessness, desperation, and going down a path of doing something like that. The investment that we started making last year, we got to keep investing in those infrastructure upgrades, so if a crisis were like that to happen, we're ready for it. There's still schools, and we're pushing hard, that are supposed to have their emergency plans done. They're not done. That's a problem. So we're making sure that their emergency plans are there, and we're ready to go. Overall in New Hampshire, our firearms laws for years, they've been pretty darn good. They really are. We're a very responsible state. I think we have good controls. If you want more firearms legislation, and it looks like that debate is going to happen in Washington. That's probably where it should happen, right? I mean, we could pass all the laws in the world here in New Hampshire. Again, will they truly make people safer, or are we going to just rest on our laurels that we passed a law? If that debate should happen, it should probably happen at the federal level. Overall, I think our laws are pretty good here. I get a little nervous when people say, well, just do this and just do that, as if those laws will just take care of it. It won't, unfortunately. Trust me, we would attack it if it would. We need a better criminal background system. It works fairly well, but if there are truly criminals that should be in that system and not be getting firearms, we need to make sure that system is getting that response back quickly. New Hampshire is still one of the few states that, oh, not few, there's a few of them out there, that doesn't participate in the mental health registry. That's, again, I think we need to find a way to make that happen, but it's a very slippery slope. Because you take antidepressants, should you be denied a firearm, right? Or versus somebody who has real severe mental illness. And we have some laws that don't allow those folks to have firearms, but where's the gray area, right? So that's a debate that's kind of been going on for ages. I think we got to get back to it and figure it out, because those that would have this severe mental illness, and let's face it, anyone shooting up a school has severe mental illness and probably shouldn't have been given a firearm in the first place. They should not have those weapons. But how do you define that? Where does it go? So I think we're all hopeful and pleasantly optimistic that Washington is taking this seriously, and they're going to take that up at the federal level, and that's exactly probably where the firearms piece has to be taken up.
So following back up on that, I know you can't just blacklist all weapons, and you can't say all are guns, but all these school shootings have happened with AR-15s that you can walk into a Walmart and purchase. We're not asking to take away anyone's guns. We're just asking to make it harder and to have more restrictions on that kind of thing. It shouldn't take 24 hours to be walking in and buying a weapon that's specifically designed to kill people faster, easier, with less recoil, and they're lighter. That's why
So I'm not a gun expert. I don't own a firearm. I'm not a gun expert. But I'll tell you this. There are 9mm that shoot faster than an AR-15 does. So are we going to ban that too? I'm not saying yes or no, but I'm saying you just because you took an AR-15 off the market, what's next? You know, where's the line? Is that going to truly prevent people that want to do bad things from actually doing bad things? I find it hard to believe that just by banning an AR-15, all of a sudden everything's going to get better. I'm not saying it. I think there is a line. You have to have a line somewhere. There are no automatic weapons in this country. That's great, right? They tried an assault weapons ban early on, and the study came back in the early 2000s and said they don't think it was that effective. That was way before my time. So I think the argument is that they're going to have to debate in Washington is, what is that line? Just because the AR-15 is out there, a lot of people have used it. That's for sure. It's not as easy as just saying that. I mean, what if we passed that law and they took all the AR-15s off the market? Everyone would say, "Yay!" Right? Did we make things safer? I'm not the expert. I don't know, but I think that's where the debate's going to be. And again, that's a federal debate. Right? Why do that state-wise piecemeal? That's really a federal issue that needs to be addressed.
Governor, you mentioned the need for solutions for the opioid crisis and children's mental health, yet you're seeing closing programs serving people with opioid crisis needs. And we've also seen dozens of programs close for children serving the mental health need. What can we do to support these programs and services?
Absolutely. So look, the opioid crisis is first and foremost. I doubled the alcohol fund. We got that done. We put more money to the problem and more resources. What we also asked was for kind of more accountability. One of the problems we found was there was a lot of money that came really fast to the opioid crisis in the last 3 or 4 years, because the state, frankly, should have been dealing with it 10 years ago, and they just weren't doing it. So they threw a whole bunch of money at it to a lot of nonprofits who are very well-intentioned, but look at what happened with Serenity Place. Complete financial meltdown, and for all the wrong reasons, frankly, and they're under investigation right now, and frankly, from what I know, they probably should be, and we'll see what the Attorney General comes out with that. So I said, you got to have these things sustainable for the long term. Let's make sure these organizations have metrics in place, they're achieving certain outcomes. So we're starting to take all the providers through a financial review. Hope is the one that kind of hit the news recently. We took Hope through a financial review. I guess the HHS gave them comments a couple months ago. They gave responses back, and we're ready to move forward with a contract in about 2 weeks. Coincidentally, at the same time, they said, look, these facilities here, here, and here, they have to close down. The vast majority of these organizations are still supported by their nonprofits, is supported by donations and those types of funds. They have to make sure that whatever they're doing is there for the long term. We have to be there to help them, and we have to be there to put dollars in. And there are some programs where we pulled some money back and we put more money over here. We found there were a lot of duplicative services. Services being rendered here and here for the exact same constituency in the exact same region. Okay, well, we can be more efficient with that. So we're creating a lot of efficiencies in the system, but the biggest concern I have, and what we're really putting everyone through a little bit of scrutiny for the right reasons, saying, are your models in place? Do the board of directors know their fiduciary responsibility in maintaining how the funds are spent? The other issue a lot of people, just to jump into it a little bit, we're dealing with now is Medicaid. Hope is a great example. They don't have a Medicaid model. They have a great model. Hope serves more people than almost anyone in the state. It's a great model. It's more peer-to-peer support and counseling. That's not a Medicaid model. They can't reimburse for Medicaid, or if you force them to do so, you're really asking them to change their model. So how do you do that? I mean, you can keep throwing tons of money at organizations like that, but what are the results? What are the outcomes? What are the metrics we're going to use to assess that success? That's really what we're trying to figure out right now. It's never been done in the country, and we're hoping to kind of use Hope a little bit as a model to figure out how to make that happen. And we're going to get a contract out to them, and hopefully they can keep a couple of these locations open. That's really going to be up to them. So it's about accountability in the system, and when you have that, everything gets more efficient, and you can expand on programs like workforce-friendly recovery, workforce-friendly workplaces, recovery-friendly workplaces, sorry. The new prevention programs we're putting out, we just don't do nearly enough in prevention in this state. Again, can't use any Medicaid dollars for prevention programs. That's why I love the idea of a block grant from Washington. You want to have the flexibility. We don't have a ton of flexibility with the money that comes into the state right now. That's why I'm working with Washington quite a bit to create that flexibility and kind of open up and unlock the potential for our resources. Did I see? Oh, sorry. Nanu Nobis.
Governor, given following up with your last comment about the technical flexibility for money that might come in from the federal government, assuming there is some infrastructure bill that gets passed in Washington, and assuming some of that money trickles down as it should in New Hampshire, does the state, does the administration have any plans on how that money might be administered if there is flexibility?
Absolutely. So there's a couple things with the infrastructure bill that Trump put out, and I've been asked with a few other governors to be part of that team to give them ideas on how to unleash the potential, because anyone can write a check, but the difference with this administration is they want to write a check with a lot of flexibility, right? Let the states decide what to do. So one thing they are going to, this bill looks like it's going to do is really force states to match funds, right? If the state puts up a little money, the federal government will put up a lot of money. That's great. That's real partnership. Some of the areas that we're looking at, obviously, are groundwater, clean drinking water fund, right? So we know we have a potential drinking water problem with PFAS and a few of the chemicals that we're finding. I'm investing $275 million, more money than ever before, to make sure we have clean drinking water infrastructure. I say it all the time, there's no bigger faith in government that you take than when you turn on the faucet and hand your kid a drink of water. You're really counting that the government did their job. So we're going to invest over $275 million over the next 25 years to make sure that we're investing in that. That would be a great program where we could see probably a lot of match funding potentially come in. One thing people don't realize on our a lot of the roads and bridge work we get on our highways, it's almost all federal money. We don't get enough of that money. We really get shortchanged. Vermont gets more of a federal share of dollars than we do. It's appalling, frankly, given that we have more infrastructure, we have a bigger population, we have bigger needs on our roads. We get, I don't want to use the word we get screwed over on that, but we do. The formula isn't fair. It's really not fair. So in the next round of federal funding, we need our congressional delegation fighting hard to readjust that formula. We'll probably get shortchanged $40 million over the last 10 years. That's $400 million that was probably left on the table that we should have had. Imagine how many red-listed bridges we could have fixed with that. So that alone, I think, will make a big impact. And then we talk a lot about, or Trump is, and I agree with him, it's called recycling assets. The government owns and controls so many actual assets that we're just not doing anything with. Let them loose. Turn them back to the private sector, right? Let them buy the land, invest in the land, whatever it is, so we can take that money and reinvest it in our infrastructure, in our ports, or whatever it might be. We're looking at that over at Pease and some options we have over there. Really unleash the power of those assets to do what they do best. And the government has been in this mode for the last 40 or 50 years of kind of hoarding land, especially out west. But here too, you'd be surprised at what the federal government and the state government owns here. Unleash that, right? Let's get it back into the private sector with rules and restrictions and regulations. We don't want to, put up neon signs all over our highways, of course. But you can unleash some of that to really tap into the potential of the private market.
I hear you have an open door policy, and I'm wondering how that works. If it's truly an open door policy, because I'd like to.
Well, I have a lock on I do have one lock on my door, to be honest. I have one lock on my door. But look, one thing I try to do, especially given all the negativity out there, you got to be accessible, right? People say, oh, you're always out for the photo op, Governor. Look, I'm all across the state. I'm not going to lie to you. You bet. I'm in Colebrook. I'm in Berlin. I'm in Conway. I'm in Keene. I'm in Winchester, whatever it is. Because you've got to be accessible. Because when you're not accessible, and that's not just me, it's the Senate and the legislature, when we're not accessible, you know what people turn to? They turn to social media. They turn to, I'm not going to call it fake news, nothing like that, but they turn to getting their news from kind of the unreliable source, if you will. Right? So the more we're accessible, the more you're making a decision and you're having an impact to really make things better. So again, can I meet with everyone who wants to meet with you? No, probably not. I mean, I have a list a mile long. But either pick up the phone, call the office, whatever it is. You know, we try to meet as many people as we can. I mean, we work 15 hours a day just meeting with folks. It's, you know what I love? I love when you say, hey, I'd love to meet with you. Come out and visit my business or visit my nonprofit or whatever it is. I'd much rather go and visit the crowd and see eye to eye and hand to hand what the issues of the day are. But literally pick up the phone and call the office. I'll give you my, honestly, just wait, I'll give you my cell number. Most of the people in this room have my cell number, by the way, so you should too. I'm happy to give it.
Governor, I'm Brian Smith, I live in Chester, New Hampshire. A question I thought of this morning after watching the news last night, the gentleman from Parkland, Florida, his daughter was massacred in that event. A little perspective, we lived in Newtown, Connecticut for 10 years. Luckily, our girls went to Head Meadow School and not to Sandy Hook, but we lived through that experience. And I was with my boss at Siemens when his son at Virginia Tech was killed. I guess my question is, if I'm a headmaster at Derryfield or at Pinkerton, as an example, close to me, where do I go for real expertise and resources to address what are the options with regards to solving this issue from a physical infrastructure standpoint? I'm in the IT business, but I may not be if I'm a principal, and I can relate to my colleague over here. You know, if you go into a commercial data center today that's managed by someone like systems engineering, you don't just walk in the door.
Right.
You go through at least 3 levels of authentication, certification, validation before you even reach public spaces, no matter your IT gear. So where do I go, or where does an expert in leadership in school go for real expertise and participation by
Great question.
Siemens or Cisco to lend expertise to this question to solve the physical infrastructure that is absolutely a solvable issue today?
Absolutely. The quick answer is, I can be very direct. His name is Perry Plummer. He's our Homeland Security Manager in the state. He manages our operations center at the state level. He and his department are leading up the charge in creating all of the emergency response plans for all of the schools. So they'll go in and help a school say, okay, you know, you have this access breach here, you need a better surveillance system there, these teachers need to be better trained about what to do, here's what a lockdown training is. And I can put you directly in touch with them, but they've been working with schools all across the state, and that's why when we put out this $20 million, we got like 300 schools applying for the money right off the bat. I think we're pretty proactive, and hopefully we'll get some more money out there. So again, before I leave, but his name is Perry Plummer, and I'll be sure to get you his number before we go. He's the guy.
I'll share that response and initiative with our CEO, Craig Kirby.
That'd be great.
It's right in front of us from an ability to solve it from a technology standpoint. Not to make it easy, I don't know anything about guns, but IT and physical security and that challenge, we can solve the problem.
He's got a whole team of experts. They'll walk the campus with you. That's great. Sure. How about one more? We'll do one more too? Sure. Okay, I got one more in me. Yep.
I'm just curious, until there's a greater result to the gun violence in our country, if New Hampshire would be able to, we lead the country in a lot of ways, if we would be able to have law enforcement officers, veterans, deputies, that would be present at the schools protecting each other. Because I feel like we need to get to that sacredness in our children and youth, so they can just participate in that.
Yeah, I think one of the parents kind of brought up that concept last night a little bit. Look, schools have that option. They do. I mean, there are schools that have officers at the schools now. That if that makes people feel safer, and there's that option is absolutely there. The state really can't mandate that, and I don't think the state should mandate that per se. But I suppose that's an option out there that the local, they have campus police at the university and whatnot. So there's no reason you can't expand. At least until we get to some sense of feeling like we've made the ball, moved the ball down the road in terms of making, not just making people safe, but actually having a tangible difference in creating a safer environment for those kids. Look, thank you guys very much. And for those who I spoke with, come and grab my cell number in all seriousness. Look, we're right down the road, room 208, corner office. Seriously, that's where we are. Come find us. Let us know what we can how we can keep doing it better. At the end of the day, it's really about having that individual response back to create better policy for better outcomes. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Governor.